Hey there, so I'm back for another recording. Let's talk a little about Simpson's paradox, which is really the only reason I had that whole spiel on conditional probabilities. Unless I didn't just give you a spiel on conditional probabilities, then nothing happened. I record these out of order sometimes. Let's just talk about the relationships between variables in particular. So when we have a relationship between just two variables like fitness and heart health, well, it seems pretty straightforward. Either fitness causes heart health causes fitness, or something along those lines. But while in reality, relationships are between multiple variables. So it's like calorie intake, age, and fitness. All three of those influence heart health. So we need all of that data there. So let's just illustrate a relationship between two variables, x and y, which are very creatively named. So here I've plotted that data that we've just seen here. Ooh, very exciting, I know. Okay, and when I plot a correlation, just a basic line, or not even plot a correlation, when I plot a regression line, thank you, Mason, you can see that it's got a nice linear relationship. It's beautiful. But what if there's a third variable? So in this case, I have added an extra row in our data that groups our variables by a third factor, as I've illustrated here with A and B. So when we include that third variable, we see something really different. Without taking into account A and B, we have that gray line that suggests a positive linear relationship. But if we take into account that third variable, here it's some grouping of A and B, we can see that, in fact, the relationship between X and Y is negative, just like a total flip, when we account for that third variable. And this is, in essence, ladies and gentlemen, Simpson's paradox. Wow, that was short. I thought there was more video. So that's the problem. So let's keep going and possibly merge these together. Let's talk about a case study looking at Berkeley admissions data. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Berkeley is the main branch of the University of California school system. It is a very, very good program, and there are, at least in my area, a lot of good personalities, or at least up until 10 years ago, there were a ton of good personality psychologists there. But anyway, it's a good school. It's like the best, if not, it's pretty close to the best state school. The schools that rival it are like UCLA, so another University of California school, and UNC, University of North Carolina. There are a couple others. Forgive me for not mentioning your specific state by name. We all know what that state is. You can say it out loud if you'd like. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about this cool data. It's from the 70s, but it's a really classic example, so I would be very remiss if I didn't talk about it. So this study was carried out by the graduate division at the University of California, Berkeley in the early 1970s to evaluate whether there was a gender bias in graduate admissions. These are real data, and these data come from 6 departments, and for confidentiality, we'll call them A through F. And we have information, we as in us, have information about whether the applicant was male or female. This is the 70s. Gender was a binary in those days, or at least documented as one. And whether they were admitted or rejected. So first, let's look at whether the percentage of men admitted to UC Berkeley was indeed higher than the percentage admitted for women. And then we'll do the same for percentages in each department. So here's our data. Cool, cool, cool. Very nice and fancy. And it's just a breakdown of 4,500 data decisions. And we can see that more folks, so here's our tibble that gives the verdict, admitted or not, the gender, and the department. And we can see here that there's fewer women overall that are applying, and we can also see that there's a pretty wide distribution of departments. They're very creatively named, but that's for anonymity, as well as just the raw number of rejections and admissions. Okay, so what can we say? I've spoiled it here. So let's calculate the probability of being admitted given you're male versus the probability of being admitted given you're female. Here I've just done a really basic count tibble to give you all the raw data you need. Ta-da! So what I've done is I've grouped our data by gender and then mutated it to report the proportion admitted as a function of sample is n over the total. And we can see here that 70% of women are being rejected and 30% are being accepted, versus for men where 40 or 55% are rejected and 44% are admitted. Now, from a raw numbers standpoint, more men are being rejected, but as a proportion, men are being rejected at a lower rate. And that's the crux of the question. And let's look at the overall distribution. I've plotted a plot here where we can essentially see those proportions. We can see that the admit rate by gender right here. Enjoy the ggplot code. So, but what can we say about the distribution of gender by department? Because, I mean, the fact is that data exists in our data set, so it's obviously going to be important in this token example. But if all we had was this, that would suggest that women were being discriminated against and that they were being admitted at lower rates to the University of California, Berkeley. However, as you may have guessed, there's a confound here. Looking at the admit and rejection rates by department. So I've broken down and used a pivot here to provide our counts by department of female reject, female admit, male reject, male admit, to see if those rates actually do differ by department, because it could very well be that women are applying to different programs than men. So, at least in my area of quantitative psychology, I mean, we're approaching parity, but unlike the rest of psychology, where women predominate, in quantitative psychology, women are fairly rare. In the biggest departments, or the largest quantitative methods programs I know, like the one I came from, we had 2 female faculty out of, like 10 or something. And that was big. It's, my cohort was half female, which is kind of cool, but the proportions are very different. However, the admit rates differ drastically, as I will illustrate here with different data. So now let's break down our admissions by department. And we can actually see that for the most part, in Department A, more women are admitted. Department B, more women. For the most part, they're pretty comparable. A couple have a little higher here, higher there, but I imagine that if we were to do confidence intervals around these percentages, none of them would be significantly different. Possibly A, but that might just be a small sample. Let's back up. Yeah. Oh no. A actually does have a lot of applicants. It's just we got a small sample of women. So is this a case for gender discrimination? No, not really. So while it looks like it could be, because on its face, women are being rejected in droves compared to men. However, when you break it down by department to actually see where people are having that unit of comparison, if anything, women are advantaged. Maybe a little. So let's break down these departments a little more. We already saw the image implicitly. Sorry, I had to smush this back to get it to work. Yeah, so, okay, 82% for A. Yeah, these differences are really, really minor, super minor. Yeah, I would boil this down to applicant quality, these differences. However, we would need to see that piece because in this data set, this de-identified, super de-identified data, here's what we have. And it tells a very different story than those raw percentages. So wrapping up, that's my fun little illustration into probability and whatever other thing. Wow, I'm clearly very tired. Simpson's paradox. Wow, that took. Anyway, I will see you later. Bye.